it's been 8 years since I was in Tameside. There's been some hard years in between times.
They certainly have, yeah.
What have
There's been a change of leadership as well, as you alluded to.
Yeah. We'll come to that.
You've missed my best years. All my best years ahead of me.
Well, I'm hoping for that, and I'm hoping for better years for the country in general.
I agree.
To be fair. We've had some very, very difficult times since Lehman Brothers collapsed and changed the face of world politics and world economics in 2008. What have been the toughest challenges in facing you in Tameside specifically?
Crikey, it's easy in as much as it talks about the resourcing that the council has. The council's lost nearly 60% of its central government grant. And I don't care who you are, whether you're a householder or you're a business, if 60% of the monies that you need to deliver vital services is taken away, that means you have to very quickly look at what your priorities are and make sure you can sustain services to vulnerable people. And that's what we've been able to do in Tameside under immense pressure. Anyone who's followed the story of the last 7 years will know that it's also a story of massive unfairness. It's a north versus south discussion, with the north losing out heavily in the severe cuts that have been made, and the south, although yes, clearly there have been some cuts in the south, no one would suggest there haven't. They've been nothing compared with the cuts that we've had to face. When I first became leader, we had just under £600 million roughly to spend on services, and that's literally servicing everything from our schools, our older people, children's services, our bins, our roads, everything that in truth makes up a good society for people. People really respect local government, they respect the services that they get, and poll after poll have said that it's the most trusted part of government. And yet for me, the severe cuts have really reduced our ability to deliver for local people for the things that they want. We still want cleaner, safer, greener streets, and that will continue to be a priority for us. But actually, the real challenge for us as a council is in our health and social care. In Tameside, the health and social care economy is roughly £70 million short of the money it needs to deliver the services that people currently take for granted. That's the massive challenge that I have, and that's what the last 7 years has been all about. So when you talk about Lehman Brothers, you're absolutely right. Why is it that older, more vulnerable people in Tameside are having to pick up the cost to lesser services for what was a world financial crash? They didn't cause austerity, but my goodness, have they been made to hurt because of austerity.
I mean, do you think perhaps you've become, to an extent, you've been, with the withdrawal of the amount of cash, you have been leaner and more efficient to a point? Is that?
I mean, that's part of the argument, yeah. We hear that, but that's because the vast majority of the services a council provides, most of our residents don't see it. Most residents think that the money that we get is all about sweeping the streets, putting potholes, repairing potholes, keeping street lights on, making sure the bin service continues to collect the refuse and dispose of the refuse. Yes, that's clearly an essential and important part of what councils do. But that is nothing compared with where we spend most of our money, and most of our money goes on older, vulnerable people and children that we have to look after, because of whatever reasons, be it family reasons or health reasons, they come into our care. And people don't see that, and what I've had to do is in truth reduce budgets in areas that people prefer to see it spent. You know, our parks, we've had discussions about libraries over the last few years. We've made sure that each of our towns had a significant library service contained within a building. But for me, it is about services and not buildings, and that's been one of the changes. And people will always take the placards out when it's a closure of a building, But my concern has been about the delivery of the services, both for the wider community, those who pay their council tax. Obviously, they still want a service and they're still entitled to service, and they still, by the way, get a magnificent service from Tameside. We've won Local Government Chronicle Council of the Year this year. You don't do that by chance. After 7 years of austerity, we were able to express to a group of experts, independent experts who came to assess us, that not only does Tameside Council understand what the challenges are, we have answers to most of the significant challenges we have, and the biggest one is on how we now integrate health and social care. And that's not a Tameside issue, that's a UK-wide issue. And that's why the government actually gave every council the request, although the freedom, to raise council tax by 2% this year, to pay solely for the challenges that health and social care faces. And we are told that that's going to be repeated in over the next few years. That's because government has not prepared themselves to tackle the issue and are leaving it to local government. And I'm happy for them to leave it to local government, but we need more than just resourcing, although resourcing is important. We need the powers to make a difference. Tameside is the first area in the country to formally integrate its health and social care between the council, the hospital and local GPs. And again, that doesn't just happen by chance in Tameside. We've always been a forward-thinking area. We've always been a pragmatic area. We look for solutions. We don't want to just talk about problems. And our solution is in a formal integration of health and social care. And that still has a massive financial challenge to it.
That's very interesting. I mean, because the policy of social care did change roughly about 5-6 years ago, didn't it? And you had this kind of what would you call it?
Well, the government changed, didn't it? The government prefers commissioning. The government tries to create distance from those who provide the services to those who commission the services, in an attempt, in my view, to bring more private money into the health service and delivery of healthcare. Yeah. So that's one of the significant changes.
It was more of a centralisation. I remember that small little. I remember in my back neck of the woods, I covered a couple of stories on small, established little companies being pushed out for these larger companies based outside the city, outside of Salford, and the chaos that caused, all in the cause of name of rationalisation. Yeah. I'm just curious, actually, how what is the model for your integrated service?
If you think about a journey for let's say an older person rather than specific services, there are times when, in the past, and to a certain extent still today, but that's part of the transformation, when an older person, if they needed some social care, would go to the council. Clearly, if they needed some primary care, they go to the GP, and of course, if they needed admission or delivery of a specific service in the hospital, they go to the hospital, and they were seen as separate. But actually, the truth is, the older person might be coming to the council because they're not getting the right level of services they got from the GP, or the GP is not commissioning the right sorts of healthcare from the hospital. So you had quite a fractured system, and definitely quite an expensive system, because sometimes you were is there such a word as triplicating? Triplicating the actual support that person needed. Right. Well, we're saying, forget about who delivers it. Let's look at the person first. Yeah, what's the best route? How do we make sure that person goes to the right place at the right time to get the right service? And most of the time, that best service for that person is in their home. So it's not about them going out to the council, out to GPs, out to the hospital. How about the council, the GPs and the hospital coming to them and helping to transform them? And we do that better if we have one central area, one central commissioning group who looks at what that person needs rather than what the hospital part of that is, or what the council part of that is, or what the GP part of that is. That's very simplistic. It's more complex than that. That's roughly what we're trying to do. And if we do it that way, that reduces the cost. It doesn't reduce them by 2/3, obviously, but it does reduce the cost significantly. And in this area, overall, we're spending just short of £400 million a year in Tameside. So it's not a small back pocket budget. It's a significant healthcare budget, and we need to make sure that it's spent wisely. But obviously a significant part of that is in and around some clinical care as well. So it's about having the right people in the right place, making the right decisions about that individual that's in front of them.
So you're liaising with the hospital as well, is that?
We have an integrated care organisation, and I want to use those three words because it's something like the Tameside and Glossop integrated care, and it goes on for another 5 or 6 words after integrated care organisation. So Tameside and Glossop Foundation Trust Integrated Care Organisation, I think, is the current short logo for it, and of course that means nothing to anybody, but what I think will mean something to people is there's now one body. There's no longer 3 parts of it, there's just one body. So it's that 3-in-1 concept, and that's what we've done here. So now we have the needs of the person with the 3 organisations in the room, rather than in the past they'd have a council part of it, and then they have a GP part of it, and then they have a hospital part of it. That, to me, simplistically, is a significant change. But fundamentally, the decisions are still made by the right person. So in that coordinated, integrated body, it's still clinicians that will make clinical decisions. It'll still be social care experts who make social care decisions. Yeah. And
it extends beyond older people, because it extends to people with drug problems and things like that.
Well, right. Initially, this is around health and social care, okay? Because that's a significant part of the budget. But you're right, it doesn't take a genius to work out that that approach can start to flow out into other areas. One of the biggest problems that the country has, and GM has, and Tameside definitely plays a part in, is around how do we get people back to work. And there are a variety of reasons why some people don't go to work, or find it harder to go to work because of health issues. Yeah? Poor health for whatever reasons, poor mental health. That's becoming a much larger problem that we all accept now we need to tackle. And so if we want to get people the opportunity to work, then sometimes we have to start in the doctor's surgery. We have to start further back to work out what it is that that person needs to get them into work, because we would all agree that people in work is better for their overall health, definitely better for the community that they live in, and absolutely better for society. So that integrated approach is absolutely the right approach. And by the way, we are doing that. We have some neighbourhood hubs in Hyde and Ashton around exactly that, where we're integrating some of our services with the police and the council and other agencies, bringing them together to see how can we solve problems in one part of the council and the community, rather than, as I said before, in different parts.
All right. Well, thanks for that. And that rationalisation, presumably, is what is behind the demolition of the council office.
That's part of it. I mean, Tameside Council, like most UK councils, grew. And we liked to place our services as closer to the people as we possibly could. That usually meant, so in Tameside we have 9 towns, so that meant that we'd put services in buildings that were in Hyde, services in buildings that were in Staley Bridge, services in buildings that were in Ashton, Droylsden, Denton, going round the area. And of course, when we had the resources to do that, we were able to deliver that in that way. But clearly now, the massive financial challenge that we've had, I said in 2010 when I became leader, that I will close every single building if I have to deliver and protect the services that people need. And so the redevelopment of Ashton Town Hall, at Ashton Town Hall, was actually a building built in the recession of the late 80s. 81, late 70s, sorry, early 80s, that's right. But it was a building built for its time. It was literally a radiator for Ashton. It was heating the community of Ashton, because it was built basically out of aluminium and steel. Right. It was a cheap building constructed at the time because there wasn't a lot of money about. We, by rationalising our entire estate and then knocking down that building and starting again, the new building that's going to go there, the council's only going to need about 20 to 25% of that new building. 3/4 of that new building is going to be for community groups, it's going to be for the health and care organisation, it's going to be for other community organisations to come into, and also for non-council groups to use as well.
And where's the money coming for the rebuild, is that?
Oh, crikey, that's a variety of places.
Some private money, presumably.
Well, the first is clearly the council resources. Ultimately, it will be a building that we will control and we'll obviously lease and rent out. So clearly that's important. We're working in partnership with the college, don't forget. So part of that new building is going to be a joint services centre between ourselves and the college. And again, that's a conversation we've had with the college over many, many years. Tameside College is a very successful college, but it was always on the outskirts of Ashton, outskirts of the town itself. No real benefits. If you look around Greater Manchester, go to places like Bolton, you talked about Salford, the closer you can bring those college activities and the student activities into the town centre, there's a real financial boost to that. And it's not only that, it also makes it life easier for the students. And so that's what we are doing. That's part of the transformation that Vision Tameside is all about. And so yes, some people like to call Vision Tameside just about a town hall in Ashton. It's not. It's far, far greater than that. And it is about how we transform what we do, but get bang for our buck. And although we are investing in that new building, as I say, we're going to use a very small part of it. It's about how we get the right services in the right place for our communities.
A couple of questions within that, the challenges of Tameside, as I see them, having briefly come back. I mean, you know, the borough looks to be in fairly good health, to be, you know, to the outsider, casual glance, you know. Transport for Greater Manchester, something I've not looked into in absolute detail, but I always knew that this is fundamental to Tameside's success in connecting to what they call the economic hub and beyond. Couple of questions within that. Mottram bypass, the story that never ends. What's happening there, and what developments, and you know, what are your frustrations there, if any?
A huge amount of frustrations shared with the residents who have to suffer day in, day out, the blight of tens of thousands of vehicles. And I think if there's been one consistency in Tameside, is our desire to see a solution there. Clearly we had a public inquiry some years ago that wasn't able to continue for a whole range of technical reasons, and for me as leader, I generally try to find a pragmatic approach. I know that the local Member of Parliament, Johnny Reynolds, and Andrew Bingham, the other side of the border, are both working on this in Parliament as well, and I think we are closer to a solution today than we have ever been. The government has talked about its Pennine Tunnel, because you know there is an issue of where the vehicles go. You can't. There's no good in taking them a traffic jam from Tameside, from Mottram, and just dumping them somewhere in the Glossop area. You know, there has to be a reasonable and sufficient answer for all of the communities. And so the government has said that it will release some monies to do some investigative work into that. So when you start to look at the whole of how transport works in that area, I think, as I say, we are far closer to a solution. But this council remains committed to finding that solution. Because I picked my son up from Sheffield University after doing his 4 years there and getting a first class degree on Sunday, and even I'll pass it on, Nigel, thank you. But
what was it?
It was in information technology. Oh. But literally, we went on a Sunday morning where it should be relatively quiet, and we spent not a huge amount of time, but we still queued at the end of the motorway and still queued all the way through Mottram, and took 6, 8, 10 minutes to get through that small stretch, and that was on a non-busy early Sunday morning. So I see firsthand what it's like. And I'd really like to be able to stand up one day in the near future and say, here is the solution. But it does need significant capital money spent on new infrastructure. and therein lies the problem. We're in the middle of austerity. The Chancellor, who was supportive of his northern powerhouse and capital investment in the north to try and balance the huge investment, and I think there's a figure last year, 93% of the money the government is spending on new infrastructure in England and Wales was spent in and around London and the South East. Yeah? When you have that massive imbalance in this country, it's no wonder that the problem that is the Mottram bypass, or whatever we want to call the actual solution there, when you're spending 93% of your money.
I'm absolutely with you on that. I mean, but you think, and I've got so many examples of my own, over the years. I remember when we were bidding for 200 million to the trams, back in the 90s, and I was living in London, and I was going down the tube and I saw one of the Evening Standard billboards, 5 billion needed just to upkeep tube infrastructure over the next 5 years, and I thought, hang on, how does that doesn't equate fairly. 5 billion for a population of 9 million, and we're scraping around for 200 million for a population of 3 million.
That's
So,
right.
I mean, it didn't, But
And by the way, it depends where you draw the line, because actually if you take the Greater Manchester economic area, it's near 5 million people. So but no, it's that unfairness.
But my point now is, do you think that we've got, our local MPs are doing enough to sound that out down in the House of the Parliament and in the government committees and what have you?
I think it's more than that. I mean, I get on well with our local MPs. I think we've got 3 really excellent MPs in Andrew, Angela and Johnny in Tameside. So I couldn't think of 3 better people who I could trust to go to Westminster. But fundamentally, it's about a rebalancing of the UK. And that's a conversation that's been had in all parties at this present moment in time. And it is also about Manchester. You know what? Manchester has a long history of being different, standing on its own, having a very strong voice, and I hate stereotypes, but actually has a quite good Mancunian stereotype, and I think Tameside is part of that Greater Manchester organisation through the combined authority. We are now standing up and making it very, very clear that enough is enough. And so it's no surprise that Greater Manchester was ahead of the game on devolution, continues to be ahead of the game, and I, as a leader of Tameside, am playing a significant role in that. But sometimes you have to cause a fuss for people to actually listen to you.
You mentioned Sheffield. I mean, to me, it's absolutely, inconceivable that we are not linked to this huge city. And I say we, I mean really East Manchester and Tameside, because that would be a whole kind of, it would. You almost feel that if there was a proper link between these 2 major, one part of a major conurbation and a huge city such as Sheffield, and there's almost this Pennine Wall there. And
Correct.
You drive in France, you drive in Italy, and you go through mountains 10 times the size of the Pennines. And you drive through a tunnel, or you drive.
I know, I'm trying not to be controversial, and I know you want me to be, but look, we know we have a Peak District Park there, and I think your description of France is a perfect example. I've had the fortune, a few years ago now, to, like you, experience France, experience French transport, and do you know what? You go through some of the most areas of most natural beauty. It's overwhelming, and yet you're right, they're able to find that compromise between protecting areas of outstanding natural beauty and at the same time delivering 21st century transportation. And we, for some reason, fall at the first hurdle in the UK. And this is where I could spend hours talking to you about economics and economic disparity, and forget north and south. It is a crime, from my view, in the conurbation that is Greater Manchester, that the south east segment that we are in, which should absolutely be directly linked to West Yorkshire and South Yorkshire, isn't. We have to go up, basically, either through the Woodhead or Snake Pass, which for significant parts of the year are impassable or passable with great difficulty, or we have to go up north, up via Rochdale, and add to the congestion around that area to take the M62. You know, in the UK, in the year 2016, we should have much better solutions, and so for me, the tunnel is a solution. It does start to address that imbalance. But you think of the economic impact that Tameside would benefit from that, not just Sheffield, but Tameside, and we really would, and that's a bit that's missing for me.